The building touches the clouds. 63 floors up, where the air is thin and the people are thinner. The elevator won't move without a key card, the kind that grants access to places most people will never see. You step inside and feel the floor drop away beneath you as you rise toward something you can't fully name yet. The receptionist is waiting when the doors open. She doesn't smile. She doesn't need to. Her silence says everything about the world you're entering. She leads you down a corridor lined with art that costs more than everything you've ever owned combined. Paintings that hang in climate-controlled stillness, watched by cameras you can't see. At the end of the hall, there's an office with windows that stretch from floor to ceiling, framing the city below like a conquest already won. The man behind the desk is younger than you imagined, mid-40s maybe. His suit is tailored so precisely it looks like a second skin. His watch could buy a house in most neighborhoods. He doesn't stand when you enter. He doesn't extend a hand. He just gestures toward a chair with the kind of casualness that only comes from absolute control. You sit. He glances at your resume for exactly 3 seconds. Harvard MBA, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank. Credentials that would open almost any door in the world. Then he looks at you, really looks at you, and asks the only question that matters. Tell me why you're really here. You know why you're here. Everyone in finance knows who this man is, even if they pretend not to. Officially, he runs a private equity firm. Unofficially, he controls more wealth than most nations. His clients aren't listed on any stock exchange. They're oligarchs who built empires on collapsed states, dictators who emptied treasuries while their people starved, arms dealers who profit from wars they help create, cartel bosses who move product across borders like water through a pipe. These are people with billions they can't explain, billions that carry the stench of blood and corruption. Your job, if you get it, is to make those billions disappear and then bring them back somewhere clean, somewhere legitimate, somewhere no one will ever think to look. You're here because you want to be rich, not comfortable, not secure, rich. The kind of rich where laws bend and borders dissolve and consequences are things that happen to other people. You tell him you want to do meaningful work. He laughs. It's a short, sharp sound, like a door slamming shut. The first honest thing you've said all day, he tells you. You start Monday. Your first week isn't orientation in the traditional sense. There are no HR videos about workplace harassment or compliance modules about ethical conduct. This is something else entirely. You learn the architecture of global finance, not the clean version they taught you in business school, but the real version. The hidden scaffolding that holds up the legitimate world. You learn about the cracks in the system, the places where money can slip through without leaving a trace. Shell companies registered in Delaware where secrecy is the law. Trusts in the Cayman Islands that exist only on paper. Holding corporations in Luxembourg with nominee directors in Cyprus who will sign anything for a fee. You learn how to build a paper trail that leads absolutely nowhere. How to structure transactions that technically comply with every regulation while completely subverting the spirit of those regulations. This isn't fraud, your supervisor explains with the patience of a teacher who has given this lecture many times before. This is optimization. The distinction, he assures you, is entirely legal. The distinction is also entirely meaningless. Your first client is a Russian mining magnate who made his fortune in the chaos of the 1990s when the Soviet Union collapsed and state assets were sold for pennies to anyone with the right connections. Officially, he's worth $4 billion. Unofficially, the number is closer to 12. The problem is that most of that $12 billion came from bribes paid to officials who are now dead or imprisoned, from embezzlement schemes that would fill textbooks, from deals made with men who are either serving life sentences or buried in forests across Siberia. He needs that money cleaned. He needs it to look like it came from shrewd investments and legitimate business ventures. He needs you. You spent 3 months constructing the structure. It begins with a holding company in Luxembourg that owns a subsidiary in Cyprus that controls a network of trusts in the British Virgin Islands. Those trusts feed capital into a private equity fund based in the Cayman Islands. The fund acquires stakes in real businesses scattered across the globe, hotels in Miami, office towers in London, tech startups in Singapore. The money flows through so many jurisdictions, so many layers, so many legal entities. that tracing it back to its origin would require cooperation from a dozen governments who have absolutely no interest in cooperating with each other. By the time you're finished, $12 billion of dirty money has been transformed into a diversified portfolio of legitimate assets. Your client sends you a case of wine that costs more than your car. Your boss hands you a bonus that makes your Goldman Sachs salary look like lunch money. You don't sleep well that night, but when you do sleep, it's in a very expensive bed. The clients get bigger. An African president who spent 30 years looting his country's treasury while his people live without clean water or electricity. A Chinese businessman who built a pharmaceutical empire selling counterfeit medications that killed people by the thousands. A Saudi prince who financed operations so dark that if they ever came to light, nations would fall. Each client presents a unique puzzle. Each one demands creativity, absolute discretion, and a complete absence of moral reflection. You become extraordinarily good at not reflecting. You train yourself to see money as nothing more than numbers on a screen, abstract and bloodless. You don't think about where it came from. You don't think about the villages that went without water because their president needed another yacht. You don't think about the families who buried children poisoned by fake medicine. You just move the numbers from one column to another, one jurisdiction to another, one identity to another. That's your job. You can walk away now. You can take your money and disappear and live comfortably for the rest of your life. You should be celebrating. Instead, you're counting the days until someone decides you know too much. The knock comes 3 months later, not the police, something worse. 2 men in expensive suits with eyes like stones. They're extraordinarily polite. They explain that the organization is undergoing restructuring. Certain positions are being eliminated. You've been selected for early retirement. They don't explain what early retirement means. They don't have to. You ask if you can make one phone call. They say no. You have maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds while they're momentarily distracted by something outside your window. You press a single button on your phone. One button that sends one message to one server. That server initiates a process you designed 3 years ago, a failsafe you hoped you'd never need. It sends copies of everything to law enforcement agencies in 12 countries. Transaction records, client lists, the locations of hidden assets, everything you know about the man on the yacht. If you're going to die, you're taking as many of them with you as possible. But you don't die. The men receive a phone call. Their expressions shift. They apologize for the misunderstanding. There's been a change in plans. You're being promoted, not retired. You're too valuable to lose. You smile. You thank them. You pour drinks with hands that barely shake. Your heart is trying to escape through your throat, but you keep smiling. You don't know why you were spared. You don't know if your message was received or if something else saved you. You don't know anything anymore except that you're still breathing. 6 months later, the headlines arrive. The biggest financial crimes prosecution in history. Hundreds of arrests across dozens of countries. Billions in assets frozen. Your name isn't mentioned. Your boss's name isn't there either. But you recognize the structures they're describing. You recognize the transactions. Someone talked. Someone gave them everything. You wait for the knock. That means they've connected it all to you. The knock doesn't come. Not that month. Not the next. Maybe you're safe. Maybe you're simply not worth prosecuting when they have bigger targets. Or maybe they're saving you for last. You're 45 years old now. You live in a country that doesn't ask uncomfortable questions. You have enough money to last several lifetimes. You own a house perched on a cliff overlooking an ocean that stretches to the horizon. You have everything you ever wanted, and you have absolutely nothing at all. You can't trust anyone. Every relationship is a potential threat. Every stranger could be an assassin. You haven't slept more than 4 hours at a time in years. You watch the news obsessively, searching for signs that they're coming for you. They're always coming for you. Even when they're not, they are. That's what you tell yourself. That's what keeps you alert. The man on the yacht was never caught. The organization was barely dented. For every structure they dismantled, 10 more were built. For every person they arrested, 100 more were recruited. The machine keeps running. The money keeps flowing. 80 billion becomes 100 billion, becomes 200 billion. You're not part of it anymore, but you created it. You design the systems that make it work. Your legacy is every crime that money enables, every life destroyed, every government corrupted, every future stolen. You sit on your cliff and watch the sun set over the ocean. You're the man who laundered money for the world's richest criminal. You're free and you're imprisoned. You're wealthy beyond measure and utterly bankrupt. You got everything you wanted and lost everything that ever mattered. The waves crash against the rocks far below. Sometimes you walk to the edge and look down into that violence. You never jump. That would be too easy. Instead, you turn around and walk back to your empty house and pour yourself a drink and wait for the knock that might never come. This is your retirement. This is your reward. This is the rest of your life.